This video is powered by patreon.com/founded productions. For early access and exclusive content, please do check it out. I've played far too much Assassin's Creed in my life, and over the span of the last 17 years, I've seen the series grow and evolve in near enough every aspect. Although this franchise is always focused on its stealth and its incredible parkour systems, the combat mechanics of these games are some of the most important elements to any Assassin's Creed experience. Of course, that combat has grown and adapted, and today I'm going to look at just how it's evolved since the series began. This is the evolution of combat in Assassin's Creed. The first Assassin's Creed game acted as a game that prioritized two things: assassinating your target stealthily and then running away. You only need to look at the game's trailer to see that's the case. As such, the combat of this first entry wasn't anything to call home about. However, it most certainly served the fantasy the game was trying to create to a T. This system was heavily defense oriented, leaning on the art of true sword fighting to create a grounded experience, with the fundamentals of attacking, blocking, dodging, and countering, something we'll be talking about a lot more later. The attacks were simple, but could be chained with precise timing, as if the player could match their press of attack to the swords clashing together, it would lead to an instant kill animation, a simple combo mechanic that still took precision and mastery to get down. The blocking too was basic, with a simple hold of the right trigger to deflect attacks, and if matched with a timed counter, would end in another instant kill animation. However, this instant kill was only guaranteed when using the hidden blade to fight, and here Ubisoft included a keen difficulty curve, as the counter window for the hidden blade was significantly shorter than that of the sword, and it retained no defensive option if you missed this window, meaning if you wanted to slice through enemies quickly, you had to put it very simply, get good. As the game went on and Altair gradually earned his ranks, the game allowed for extra moves, such as grab counters and a short sword with a quicker attack speed. But the fundamentals of the system stayed consistent, and formed a combat experience that stood out from its counterparts. This fundamental system stayed mostly the same in the game's sequel, however it saw certain intricacies be added that really expanded on what came before. This came first with a variety of guard types, as agile guards, captains, spearsmen, and brutes were all added, each presenting their own problems. Captains had significantly boosted health and would be able to counter the player's attacks. Agile guards, as the name implies, could attack quicker than their counterparts. Spearsmen couldn't be attacked from the front, meaning you had to utilize strafes to get around them. And brutes essentially couldn't be attacked at all unless you disarmed them of their axes. Speaking of which, there was a much wider variety of weapons in AC2, as an economy system was introduced, allowing you to upgrade Ezio's health with armor and his attacks with better weapons, although I've personally never been able to tell much of a difference in the stats. But who knows, that might just be me. AC2 had its downgrades though, particularly in the counter windows, which became a lot more lenient and by extension made the combat a lot easier. And this was an issue that would be carried over into the next two games. Brotherhood and Revelations in essence kept the system of the prior two games, however it added a mechanic that would plague the series for almost 5 years, a mechanic that removed all complexity from the series' combat and converted it to a button mashing mess, the chain kill, in which after a successful kill you could repeatedly press attack and allow Ezio to glitch over to the nearest guard to instantly kill him. Although this definitely made you feel like a badass being able to take down swarms of guards endlessly, it made the combat of Assassin's Creed mindless, and attached a reputation to the series of simplicity, a reputation that would last far too long. AC3, 4 and Rogue unfortunately kept these chain kills, but decided to rebuild the rest of the system from the ground up, mirroring it off the infamous free flow combat system of the Batman Arkham games. Instead of being a defensively focused hitbox-based system, the game switched to an animation-based approach, meaning that no enemy could be killed until Connor had gone through the right amount of animations to get the killing blow, simplifying the system even more. The counters and dodges were changed, now coming from a successful parry, as the game would go into literal slow motion to allow the player to make the obvious choice between two buttons, either an instant kill or a useless dodge roll. Now, I will give the games this: the animation work in this combat system is phenomenal, with seemingly endless animations implemented, work that really shined through in the new multi-kill system, which occurred when the player successfully parried two enemies at the same time, and at times these awesome animations almost allowed the player to forget the mindless gameplay that got them there, and in that way, the means justified the ends with this system. Sure, from a gameplay point of view, it was entirely simplified and its difficulty curve was reduced to a flat line, but that change did allow for an incredible power fantasy that's not been topped to this day. And then, as we all know, there was Unity. Unity, the original return to roots for the series. Unity, a game clouded by its bugs. Unity, a game that tried to bring the series back to what the first game was. Unity finally did away with chain kills and made an attempt to return to a defensive focused system. The control system reverted to attack, dodge, block and counter, however instant kills were completely eliminated from the equation, making focusing on your fight an essential. This was made doubly important as Arno was crafted as sort of a glass cannon, with the number of clean hits an enemy would need to kill him with being extremely low, meaning that being surrounded by guards in Unity is a very bad idea, especially with the further integration of guns into the game. Those guns go both ways though, as the addition of semi-automatic pistols as well as rifles make ranged possibilities more than feasible in combat situations. The variety of weapons in Unity is insane, and there are ways to use certain gear to your advantage to completely dominate combat situations. Well, really, it's just by abusing the spear. Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be abusing the spear in Assassin's Creed Unity, and let's go. Now, you can probably tell that I'm a fan of the direction Unity took with its combat, but that's not to say it's near perfect. Obviously, the button delay that's present in every moment of Unity makes it much more difficult to time your attacks accurately. However, the biggest issue comes in the way combat locks in, because you have to commit to combat to do a dodge roll, meaning it makes trying to escape a major hassle, as while sprinting from a fight, a guard can easily shoot you with no chance of missing, making for an infuriating experience escaping, despite the game obviously pushing you in that direction. The combat also doesn't see quite enough variety in its experience across weapons. Of course, the spears had a longer range and heavy weapons did more damage, but you don't feel the difference as much as using the short sword in AC1 or using the spear in AC2. Oh, and fighting with a hidden blade was completely removed, a missing feature that we've not seen make a full return to this very day. Like all things in the game, Unity's combat is hit or miss, but it at least retains some of the initial value of the series' fighting mechanics, something that can't be said for what preceded it. Syndicate took a completely different direction with combat, and it was the worst possible direction the game could have gone in. Because of course, open sword fighting wasn't exactly common in Victorian England. Syndicate played on the gang elements of the game instead, and made the combat more street fight oriented. However, instead of implementing any kind of intricate boxing mechanic, it simply gave you a shorter sword, and told you to spam X. Syndicate was the first of many ACs to give its enemies comically overpowered health bars, and it returned to an animation-based approach, which essentially led to the AC3 combat system, but 5 times as long. Instead of killing your enemy after a few successful hits, you had to hack away at them with your kukri sword or knuckle dusters for sometimes minutes at a time, which unsurprisingly completely broke any immersion in the combat. The game would try and break its monotony with the occasional need to parry attacks, but the rhythm of these parries between enemies was pre-programmed and unchanging, turning every encounter into the same battle. Spam attack 3 times, press parry once, and repeat. Not only was this mind-numbing to play, but it was comical to watch, as the animation work regressed from powerful executions to Looney Tunes-esque flailing around, as Jacob and Evie would send their foes 5 feet in the air as they sliced with superhuman speed. The game also allowed for more extensive gunplay, as you could also take out your enemies with 6 consecutive shots of your revolver, which was easily the more favourable option, but other than that, the variety seen in prior games was stripped. Every weapon played the same, and had no discernible advantages or disadvantages, and the process of fighting became so tedious that it played into the ultimate reboot of the franchise. Yes, when Origins came out, it was time to change completely. It was time to make an in-depth combat system. It was time to make Assassin's Creed for grown-ups. And in theory, the combat system that Origins introduced did just that. Again, in theory. The fundamentals of Origins combat returned to hitbox mechanics with a light and heavy attack, a dodge function, a parry, and even a special move, as the weapon choice once again expanded and provided unique experiences. Enemy attack patterns were also finally switched up, as the traditional AC method of having one enemy slowly attack you while everyone else stood still was left by the wayside, making for a far more engaging experience. The special abilities meanwhile allowed for a number of charged attacks or periods of extra strength and invulnerability, which although skirting the lines of canonical sense, added another dimension to the mechanic. The slight problem in Origins was that it carried over the leveling techniques of Syndicate, as the levels of enemies simply gave them overextended health bars, and whilst that wasn't game breaking in Origins, it would get to that point in the Ancient Greek sequel. Odyssey, taking inspiration from early games in the series, did little in terms of differentiating from Origins. The fundamentals of the system were kept essentially the same, but they were all put on steroids. Firstly, special abilities were upgraded to a set of 4 reloadable skill sets that you could activate using the triggers, and they varied from the iconic Spartan kick from 300 to super heavy attacks to fucking slowing down time. Like all things in Odyssey, any semblance of immersion was really taken away, and this wasn't helped by the sketchy leveling of Origins being taken to another level, as enemies' health bars were made so obscenely large with level scaling automatically turned on, meaning that every single fight was the same repetitive wave of seemingly endless strikes, and regardless of whether you had a flaming sword or a piece of Eden, you would inevitably at one point in the game sit down for 5 minutes to bludgeon a regular enemy to death. To be fair, when it came to boss battles, this worked out alright, but it made the minute-to-minute combat experience truly excruciating, as any and all difficulty came not from the skill of the enemy AI, but from the inflated stats of Cassandra's opponents. This carried over to Valhalla, which was the Assassin's Creed game that really focused most on combat, as the fantasy of being an epic Viking raider was really hammered home, probably a bit too much. This time we saw Eivor dual wield, and if you're an intelligent individual, you would dual wield the axes, allowing for some of the most devastating abilities in the game. Although some stupid abilities remained, like freezing time or calling a 30 feet tall wolf to fight with you in battle, some others acted as a genuine and believable boost to Eivor's skill, especially the ground slam, which acted as basically an instant kill. Speaking of kills, the animation team from AC3 must have worked on Valhalla, because it has maybe the highest number of execution animations I've seen in any game. Like, there is a 20-minute compilation on YouTube of all the kills, and with the addition of disembodiment, the sheer satisfaction of finishing an enemy is at an all-time high. The leveling, thankfully, was far more toned down in Valhalla, with the regular enemies acting as ragdolls compared to the rare high difficulty opponents that provide an actual skill-based challenge, as opposed to an elongated health bar. I can't deny that Valhalla's combat is a massive step up from the games that came before it, and it created a true glass cannon fantasy that replicated the one AC3 represented. And then we have Mirage, the return to roots, the series transition away from the RPG mechanics and back to a defensive based hitbox system. And honestly, the game was what was advertised in this regard. The system is Unity-esque, if a little stripped down, returning to the attack, dodge, parry of past games, along with an instant kill counter that has a small enough counter window to make it a challenge. The game also gives the player very little health to work with, making defense a genuine priority, and escaping combat encounters a more viable option, which should be the case in any AC game. Being surrounded by guards in Mirage is an instant death wish, but taking on an enemy one-on-one proves to be a simple challenge, as the game strikes the perfect balance between feeling like an unbeatable assassin but not being a fucking demigod. And although the system is undoubtedly bare bones, I see it as a great foundation for the series to build on going forward. Unfortunately though, I don't see that happening. Wow, I really got through a whole video without ranking anything. For that, I think I deserve a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, let's get this video to 200 likes. If you're new here, please do hit subscribe, and if you'd like to see more AC content, check out patreon.com/foundedproductions for more. With that being said, thanks so much for watching, I've been Joe, and I'll see you in the next one.